Thank you all for being here today. My name is Mark Canada, and I'm the Chancellor here at Indiana University Kokomo. We are gathered here, of course, to remember Dr. Herbert C. Miller and recognize all that he contributed not only to our campus as a faculty member, but also to the city of Kokomo as a community member, and most importantly, to his family throughout his life. Dr. Miller arrived here at Indiana University Kokomo campus in 1960, becoming the first Black faculty member. Although I never had the pleasure of working alongside him, he has had a presence on our campus and will continue to have a presence on our campus in our hearts and in our minds and in his impact. Perhaps the best example of this impact is the positive influence he had on students and colleagues. I'm inspired by what I have heard about the mentoring he provided to those students, emphasizing education's value and opportunities. That message is invaluable, not only to the students themselves, but also to everyone around him. Dr. Miller set a powerful example of what a university professor should do: to teach, yes, but also to support, to welcome, to nurture, to inspire. Now, I have to go off script for just a moment here, just to mention that as I've heard people talking about his passing, it's come up in the community, it comes up on campus. We had a function last night, and to a person, every time his name comes up, people start to gush about what an incredible man he was. My only wish is that I'd been able to spend more time with him. I've never heard anybody talk about people the way they talk about Herbert Miller. His niece Norma shared that Herb's grandfather gave him $50 to attend Butler University. Well, attending wasn't enough for Herb Miller, even at that young age. He went on to graduate from Butler cum laude with a bachelor's degree in Spanish. But even that wasn't enough for Dr. Miller. Later, he attended Cornell University and earned a Romanian languages certificate. Then he came to Indiana University and achieved his Master of Arts in Slavic Studies and eventually his PhD in Slavic languages. Between his master's degree and his PhD, he went to Moscow State University in Russia, where he achieved a Russian language certificate. He received way more awards than I can possibly mention here, but let me just tick off a few. The U.S. Information Agency Distinguished Service Award from the Moscow Exhibition in 1959. The Kokomo NAACP Community Service Award in 1993. The Sagamore of the Wabash in 2000. The IU Kokomo Distinguished Service Award in 2002. An Indiana University honorary degree, LHD, Doctor of Humane Letters, in 2016. And also in 2016, he received the Indiana University Chancellor and Provost Medallion and was inducted into the Howard County Hall of Legends. And in 2020, he was awarded the Indiana University Bicentennial Medal. Although I have listed some of his faculty achievements and awards, we know that that is not what made him such an incredible man. Throughout the program this afternoon, his family members, Candace Walker and André Vaughn, will share more about him as a family member and as a devoted partner to his wife, Lillian. They were married for 56 years until she died in 2014. I'm told that Lillian specialized in cooking Russian entrees and made many of our international students and faculty members feel particularly welcome in their home. Joining Candace and André is Mayor Tyler Moore, who will speak about Herb's role in the community. Additionally, Dr. Susan Sciame-Giesecke and IUK alumnus Robert Hayes will speak about Dr. Miller and his impact on the IU Kokomo community and their own individual lives. Thank you for joining us to help celebrate the life and the legacy of our friend, Dr. Herbert Miller. And now I will introduce IU Kokomo Mayor Tyler Moore.
Thank you, Chancellor. Candace, André, family, friends, colleagues of Dr. Miller, on behalf of a grateful city, please accept our deepest sympathies and our sincere appreciation for sharing your uncle, friend, colleague with us. Our community has been blessed to have had Uncle Herbie with us through the years. I'm humbled to join these pillars of Indiana University Kokomo as we honor the life and legacy of Dr. Miller. In fact, after hearing Chancellor's remarks and reading through the obituary and even the article that was in the Indiana University Kokomo newsroom article on Wednesday, actually read through both of those numerous times, I feel I'm grossly underqualified to be here to honor him, but proud to do so. And although I've been asked to reflect on the impact that Dr. Herb has had on the community, I feel like I could easily reflect on the impact that he's had on the entire world and its community. But we've all known that for years. So going back to when I first met Dr. Herb Miller, I had just moved back to Kokomo after a 10-year stint in the South Bend and Elkhart area for college and for work, and knew I wanted to get involved and active in the community. Shortly after my reinstatement into the community, I was invited to join the Early Risers Rotary Club that met on Thursday mornings, and it was there that I was introduced to Dr. Herbert Miller. I quickly realized that this man was, in my initial observations, the kingpin of the movers and shakers of Kokomo. Everybody laughs because he often referred to the movers and shakers. And he was the kingpin. He knew who they were, recognized them and their accomplishments, and what they were doing for the community, within the community, and often suggested how we could help them. There was a certain energy and excitement about him that naturally caused folks to gravitate toward him, and I was one of them. And I quickly became a big fan of his. His unmistakable smile and that infectious laugh made everyone feel like they were special and they were one of his own. And every meeting, as I noticed on the agenda, there was a line item listed, the Miller Minute. And it was during that minute, everybody chuckled because there was no way it was kept to a minute, that his love for his community and love for his campus really shined forth. And it was not uncommon for that minute to multiply, as I mentioned. But oftentimes, the reason that minute went as long as it did was because he was introducing an international student or two that he had invited us to join us at Rotary that given morning. He valued the importance of integration into a culture within which one was living, studying, working. And so he figured that a room full of movers and shakers at the Rotary Club might be a good experience for those students. But getting back to that article from Wednesday from the IUK newsroom, I was tickled to see his famous tagline be the lead text to the body of the article: "All roads lead to Kokomo." And again, hearing the comments from Chancellor, reading through the obituary and such, it wasn't just all talk. I mean, it was the walk that he walked as well. He enthusiastically proclaimed that statement on a regular basis, and it was because he was a firm believer in it. And not just because he experienced it himself through his worldly travels and experiences, but because he witnessed it day in and day out through the international students and their families that he was involved with. those individuals came from all over the world, and he knew what it was like to be a foreigner in a foreign land and to be welcomed, to be accepted, to be received. And again, because he loved his community and loved his campus, he wanted them to have the full experience of which both had to offer. The quote that was in that article from Wednesday spoke volumes. It was from Herb himself, Dr. Miller. I want them to meet other people and see other places. When you get out of wherever you are, you learn more about yourself and the world around you. The world is getting smaller and smaller, and students need to be ready to be a part of it. That was his mission, that was his goal, that was his love. And he did that not only for the students that he mentored, but he did that to many of us in the community. In fact, you say all roads lead to Kokomo, all paths lead to Kokomo. Career-wise, Chancellor was talking about recent events. It was just this morning at a chamber coffee and conversation that it was announced that Dr. Miller had passed, because the proprietor of the coffee shop, who thought the world of Dr. Miller, was surprised to have heard of his passing. And a gentleman raised his hand, just a local guy, has an automotive detail shop that was started by his father, that made the comment. He didn't do international studies, but he commented to the group what an incredible mentor Dr. Miller was to him as a student, as a resident of Kokomo, even though he was a Purdue grad. He said he even loved the Purdue grads. So he loved and welcomed everyone. And he embraced that notion, not just because all roads lead to Kokomo, but because they lead from Kokomo, as evidenced in his travels and his experiences and what he did, what he accomplished, and what he was able to encourage and inspire others to do. So getting back to the Rotary connection as well, again, with those movers and shakers, I mean, those that are familiar with Rotary know that the club was founded on the ideals of the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Those that met Dr. Miller, heard of his experiences, continue to hear of his experiences, can go down that list. Check, 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 check. Those were ideals that he lived by. Those were ideals that he mentored by. Those are the ideals that he loved. And because his influence was so overreaching and all-inclusive, I couldn't help also but think of the passage in Matthew 25:37-40. The righteous will answer him and say, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and visit you? And the king will say to them and reply, Amen, I say to you, whatever you did for one of these least brothers of mine, you did for me. That was Uncle Herbie. That was Dr. Miller. So in closing, and I apologize if I butcher this because I just taught myself Russian yesterday. Do svidania, do gore drug, do sore sreche. Goodbye, dear friend. See you soon. Thank you again for this wonderful opportunity to honor my friend, Dr. Herb Miller, and family. You are always in our thoughts and prayers. God bless.
If Dr. Miller was here, he'd say, "Bob, get up." I want to say to the family and friends of Dr. Miller, I'm so honored to be asked to speak, and I'm honored to speak about someone that was instrumental in my life. And I send out my condolences to the family and friends as well. I'm going to speak briefly, and usually when you hear somebody speak and they use the word briefly, it's not true. I'm going to speak briefly. But I'm going to speak on what I would like to call the saga of Dr. Miller and me, which could probably be repeated 1,000 times with what he did in mentoring students. I wasn't going to say young people. I wasn't that young. But he spoke to your heart. And I knew him in a teacher-student role. And he was persistently concerned about my well-being and my academic growth. He was encouraging, yet firm. And later, you know, you learn more and things come clearer as you get older. And later, I was amazed and taken aback by such an honored man that would be worried about me. I later dropped out of IUK as I had 2 wonderful children of my own to raise. And I want you to know I love them, and they were worth it as they were able to see me walk across that stage and get my diploma. And by the way, that was on Dean's list as well. I owe this in part to Dr. Miller. Now let's rewind a little bit in time. And later, somehow, after I had been out of IUK for a few years, he had great intelligence operation going on his past students. And he found out I had dropped out. And I was no longer attending classes. And our first encounter after he found out went like this: "Bob." And he said Bob in a certain way that made you kind of, oh. He says, "Bob, how many credits are you taking this semester?" He knew exactly. I replied, "None." And he'd always say, "We can help you get back." And I really believe that. So it went like this every time he saw me out. And I got to a point that I would dodge him if I saw him first. I got good at ducking down in an opposite aisle in the grocery store. But his message was always the same when he could corner me. "You enrolled yet? How many credits are you taking?" Well, I had the opportunity to go back and take a class here, a class there, and I said, I'm going to fix him. I'm going to take his international business class. Bad move. Bad move. He was one of the toughest professors that I ever had. But guess what? In that little tiny classroom, he opened up the world to each and every one of us. He taught us about different countries, and not just language and culture and customs. We did that. But he taught us, if you wanted to know what their gross net profit or whatever was, he told you and taught you where you could go to look that up. He says you got access to the United Nations data. He says it's invaluable. So I gained a tremendous amount of information from him. I learned about what an honorable man should look like, walk like, and talk like. And ladies and gentlemen, he was an honorable man. So, Dr. Miller, I made it. I'm here. God bless you.
Everyone needs a Dr. Herb Miller in their life and career. In 1977, this very young woman from Illinois interviewed for a faculty position at IU Kokomo. She wasn't even sure where Kokomo was, as she was from the Chicago area. But she was so impressed with the man that interviewed her and eventually hired her that she took a chance. That man was Dr. Miller, and that very young woman, was me. Throughout the years, whenever we would meet, he would always say, "You know, Susan, my claim to fame is that I hired you." And I would smile. Everyone needs a Dr. Herb Miller in their life and career. My name is Dr. Susan Sciame-Giesecke. I spent the bulk of my career at IU Kokomo, first as a faculty member, dean, vice chancellor, and then the honor to be the chancellor here for 10 years. This young woman from Chicago fell in love with IU Kokomo and its mission to serve all students, primarily because Dr. Miller created a culture at IU Kokomo that is alive and well even today. His kind, caring way translated into a family culture at this campus. As many of the IU Kokomo faculty and staff can attest, when people from around IU come to our campus, they always say, "You can just feel the warmth and the caring, the Kokomojo, if you will." It has always been that way because of the foundation created by Dr. Miller. When I arrived in Kokomo on the Saturday before classes began, Dr. Miller and Lillian had everyone over for a potluck dinner. He had someone pick me up so I could find his home. And for those of us who were new, we got to meet everyone. And for the rest of the faculty and staff, they got to reconnect after the summer break. Everyone needs a Dr. Herb Miller in their life and career because he was such a great mentor. Like Michael Hare, he wrote, "From our winter home in Florida, I was saddened to read in the Kokomo Tribune that my dear friend, Dr. Herb Miller, had passed away. When I arrived in Kokomo in the fall of 1970, the director of the Purdue programs was Nick Poulton. Later that year, Nick told me that he was leaving, and he asked me if I wanted to be the director. There was just two of us. This was my first exposure to academic administration. At that time, Herb was the academic dean for the campus. Herb took me under his wing and helped me with the fundamentals of administration and to understand how to avoid stepping onto landmines. Herb had a rubber skull on his desk. I would come into his office upset about a problem, and Herb would say, 'Smack the skull,' and I would do it. It would let out this crazy recorded laugh. Then he would say, 'Now what's your problem?' Herb was a very caring person. He taught me by example how to be a servant leader. His door was always open. Herb impacted my life, and I'm sure many others as well. He will be missed. Everyone needs a Dr. Herb Miller in their life and career because he affirmed everyone. He made you feel valued. Like Irv Boschman, the former dean of business. He said, "To me, Dr. Miller was not only a respected colleague, but a friendly face I often saw on campus. Whenever I had the chance, I visited with him because I just liked talking with him. The conversation always lifted me up. I remember his engaging demeanor, his smiling face, his clear voice, always saying, 'Hi.' I remember his interest in students, their well-being, their plans, and his hope that they would plan on an international experience. I remember that to him, international life was part of who he was. He needed the feel of the international air. He told me he often drove to Indianapolis to eat at an international restaurant just to be immersed in something global. I remember how impressed I was when I learned that he was multilingual. To me, Herb was a Renaissance man. I will miss him." Everyone needs a Dr. Herb Miller in their life and career. like Vivian, one of our physical plant staff, because it didn't matter what role you played at the university, you were important to him. She said, Dr. Miller always had an open door. He was always here on Saturday and Sunday. He talked to anybody who walked in. The international students would call him granddad or grandpa or whatever. There was a lady once who visited him on a Saturday and brought him homemade tamales. He offered me some, and we sat down and had them, because he couldn't eat them all. Everyone was like family to Dr. Miller. Everyone needs a Dr. Herb Miller in their life and career because he challenged you to be a better person by helping expand your view of the world. Like the mayor said, I remember Dr. Miller taking me to Rotary because he always had invited guests, international guests, who were visiting, and he wanted all of us to meet them and to learn about their cultures. Everyone needs a Dr. Miller in their life and career. Maya Angelou probably said it best. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. Everyone needs a Dr. Miller in their life and career because he always made all of us feel included, valued, and loved. Dr. Miller, your claim to fame wasn't hiring me. It was lifting up everybody that you met. You will be missed. I have the honor of announcing that the campus is going to honor Dr. Miller and his wife Lillian by naming the lobby of the Multicultural Center in their honor. It will be called the Dr. Herbert C. and Lillian M. Miller Lobby. It is so fitting because of the welcoming nature and support they gave to international students and to all of us, and it continues the legacy of the Millers' advocacy for inclusion and global citizenship. Next, we have a PowerPoint with just some great memories of Dr. Miller.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, political leaders, Indiana University faculty, family, and friends and guests. My name is Candace Walker, and I am the great grandniece of Dr. Herbert Cleo Miller. For most of you, you will remember him as your esteemed colleague, a linguistic genius, a pillar of the community, a good friend. But to me and most of my family, he was just Uncle Herbie, our kind uncle who was generous to a fault, who always had a smile, a laugh, and a story to tell. He and my Aunt Lillian would host all of us kids in their home and prepare the best dishes. In his home, that is where I got my first taste of dandelion jelly and German strudel. We would spend our summers here in Kokomo, which I was from California, so we called it the country, visiting all of our family every year. And we had a family reunion that has continued to be held for over 100 years here in Marion, Indiana. Now, Uncle Herbie, as well as any of the elders, they were always the main attractions at the reunion. We would gather around and listen to their stories. And Uncle Herbie always had the best ones, and he could tell them over and over again, and we would still listen to them. When I look, it is here today that he would tell me to make it quick. And he would say, don't talk about my many awards, like the Saginaw of Wabash Award that I received from the governor of Indiana, Frank O'Bannon. No need for you to touch on the IU Kokomo Distinguished Service Award or any of those awards. Just hurry it up. I think he would say, just talk about how I use my life to help others, how I work to help the school that I love and the community that I love. And so today I pose the question he would often pose to us: what are you going to do with your life? When I look at the beautiful life that my uncle led for 93 years, it fills my heart with a sense of pride and joy. I look at the buildings on this campus that he helped to fund and helped to build, and now one hallway that'll be named after him. And my Aunt Lillian, and I thank you for that. I look at the many foreign students who called him Professor Grandpa, and that he and my aunt nurtured. I look at the impact he made on his community, working to get ordinances passed and things improved for everyone in Kokomo. I look at the members of our family who turned to him in their time of need, who he assisted every time without hesitation. He was a gentle spirit that used his life for the greater good, and his presence here on this God-given earth will impact people for years to come. He will be missed by so many, as witnessed by the fact that we have to have 2 services for him. Yes, he lived 93 years, and it was a great life that he had, and one that we all should aspire to. So now I want all of you to do something in memory of my beautiful, kind Uncle Herbie. Please stand if you can. If you can't, put your hand over your heart and raise your left hand and repeat after me. I will do something with my life in honor of you, Dr. Herbert Cleo Miller. Now go out and live your life and make it a great day.
Good afternoon, everybody. I saw my first key to the city in Aunt Lillian and Uncle Herbert's living room. It sat on the end table between their two sofa chairs. I cannot recall what else was on the table, probably some pictures and other knickknacks, but I distinctly remember that key. It was gold, heavy, and stood like a trophy with a plaque base. I don't recall what the inscription said beyond Dr. Herbert C. Miller and key to the city. This was a very confounding moment in my young, very literal life. Key to the city? But where's the door? I have been on many car rides out of town, never seen a door. Never saw a big door. Plus, the key might be large, but large enough to unlock a city-sized door? This made no sense to me. I then considered that instead of opening one big city-sized door that I had never seen, maybe it unlocked all the doors of the city. This explanation made much more sense to me. I eventually asked about the oversized key, more than likely in the form of telling them my theory, to which I then learned it was given as an award by the city to special people. This was likely my first introduction to my Uncle Herbert being more than just Uncle Herbert. As I grew older, I took more notice of how people reacted to him. They flocked to him, seemed to be in awe of him. If you mentioned his name, their faces would light up and they would often gush about him, about something he said, about something he had done to help them, sometimes about how he helped change their life, or usually how amazing of a person he was. He seemed to be known or known of by anybody, by most in the city. Rarely would you encounter a person who was unfamiliar with the legendary Dr. Herbert Miller. At some point in my adulthood, I had a better understanding of the key to the city. It may have been given to Uncle Herbert as an award of recognition, but the reality is he was a key to the city. My voice. I'm good. He touched countless lives in innumerable ways. He unlocked minds, hearts, and perspectives. He dismantled insular worldviews. He dismantled insular worldviews and expanded horizons for so many. Uncle Herbert was a fierce advocate for education, travel, the youth, family, outsiders, foreigners, thinking, and the overall well-being of the world. He was truly the definition of a global citizen, both in mind and in action. As a black man who came to a city that originally refused to rent him and Aunt Lillian a place to live, even as a professor, he always focused on the bigger picture. He always focused on the bigger picture. We're all people, and all people belong. It takes all types, he often said. No one was a stranger in his presence. In fact, he went out of his way to bring strangers closer, and did so without demanding that they change themselves. He exemplified what real diversity, inclusion, and cultural exchange looked like in practice. He never boasted about his awards, his accolades, nor his stature. In fact, he didn't even bring it up. He never discussed what he provided for so many. He never rested on his laurels. Instead, he shared his stories. Stories of people, interactions, ideas that amused and intrigued him, and anecdotes that always managed to relate directly to whatever you were talking to him about. It wasn't just that he told his tales. His narratives directly connected past and present. He relayed his stories as if they happened yesterday, even if they occurred 60 years ago. I tell you, how many times I asked, hey, Uncle Herbert, when did that happen? Oh, I don't know, back in the 60s, 70s, about 30 years ago. And no matter how many times he shared the same stories, he was tickled pink each and every time. His joy and amusement were present and timeless. Sitting here now, painfully aware that he is no longer with us, you may feel that the key has been lost. Uncle Herbert would be the first person to razz the notion. He would then remind you that you are still here, that we are all still here. And as long as you are here, you too can unlock a better world. That was the lesson that Uncle Herbert spent a lifetime teaching. Class is not dismissed. So go forth, make your world a better place, and do so joyfully.
And we did not talk before this.
Y'all kept trying to break me the whole time.
What an amazing tribute to such an extraordinary, amazing man. Thank you to everyone for sharing their memories of Dr. Miller with us. Tomorrow, the family invites you to join them at a public viewing from 9 until 11 a.m. before the funeral service, which begins at 11 a.m. at Wayman Chapel, 920 North Apperson Way, Kokomo, Indiana, 46901. In lieu of flowers, contributions can be made to the Dr. Herbert C. and Lillian M. Miller International Travel Scholarship Memorial. Contribution cards can be picked up at the reception. IU Kokomo staff member and family member of Dr. Miller, April Evans, will close our ceremony with a song. Immediately following the song, we invite you to join us in KC 130, around the corner, for refreshments and an opportunity to view artifacts from Dr. Miller's international travels that he donated to the IU Kokomo campus. April?
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, and I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on through the night. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me home. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my light is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call. Take my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand,
and lead me home. Dr. Miller lived an incredible life, a life led by God, a servant leader, indeed he was. Family, I thank you for the challenge to go out so that we too can make this world a better place. We all have to pass this way. We only hope we can pass with that much grace. So this next piece of a song is called I'm Coming Home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Never more to roam. Open wide thine arms of love. Lord, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Never more to roam. Open wide thine arms, arms of love, 'cause Lord, I'm coming. Lord, I'm coming. Lord,